one of the things that used to upset me when I got out was that nothing seemed to go to time. So much seemed to be happening at once. Cars everywhere, bustle. I saw people walking down the street, talking to themselves. I couldn't understand it. And then I remembered that they were talking to each other on their mobile phones. I can't remember if they were doing that when I went in. Another thing was money. I hadn't thought about it, but there's no money anymore, no. They say the Queen never carries any money. It's all cards. I haven't got an ID. John and Eric both said when I came out, I'd be able to get a pension and benefits, a house. At least I think they did. Anyway, it's not true. You need a card with your photograph on it. I had to get my ID back when I left prison. They didn't tell me I'd need another. I don't have an identity. I'm not very good with money. I get confused. And when I was living on my own and I had a job, Mum always looked after my money. I'd give her what I had and she'd give me back what I needed and took care of the rest. And sometimes she'd buy me food. I like sausages and bread. A sausage sandwich will do me fine any day. I'm entitled to benefits. I went along to the job centre and I said, I've come for my benefits. And the lady said, we don't give them out here. Did I want an interview? I said, is that for a job? She said, no. What did I do? I said, I worked in the kitchens. She said, catering? Oh, that'll do. Have a look at these. But they were all on the computer, and I've never been any good at those. She said, did I have a bank account? And I said, no, I've never had one. What about proof of address? I said, I don't know. I'm staying in a hostel. She told me to go to the post office where I could open an account. She told me I should have a proof of address and an ID. I said, I know. I quite liked it in prison. You'd think I'd want to be out after 10 years in prison. No. I had a nice little job. Not clever. It suited me. I made the light panels for trailers. I'd screw the light covers on. Well, not only me. I had a team. We'd work from 8:30 till 11, and then go back for dinner and lock up and be back at work again from 2 till 4. Tea was at 5. And then we had association. Lock up was at 8. Weekends you get locked up more, but sometimes all day. That was all right. Mother's gone. She went a couple of years ago. She was in a home. My sister wrote to me. She said it was because there was no one to look after her that she was going in. She said she was in a bad place that Mother was going to, and that it was all my fault. I said, I know it's my fault, but why couldn't she look after Mother? She said she was too old, and I don't know whether she meant Mother was or she was. She said Mother had to give up all her things and move into this tiny little room that smelled of wee, and that they'd have to sell the house to pay for it. Money that she and her husband had been hoping for. She said it was my fault. She said that if I hadn't done what I'd done, I'd be able to look after her until she was called. And we'd have all inherited. She was angry, I could tell. She said Mother was too ill to come and see me. Never wanted to write, it would have to be through her. And I did. The bloke in the next cell helped me to write it. So I was never very good at writing. Now, I got better since I was in prison. I did classes, got a certificate. But this was different. Maybe my letters were no good because I never heard back from Mum. I got one from my sister. One of the officers read it to me. It said that Mum had died and she'd been cremated. And my sister said she was glad that I hadn't been there. I'd only have got upset. I wanted to write back and say I'd have liked to be there, but there wasn't anyone who could help me. I didn't like it on the out. To be honest, I didn't really want to come out at all, but I couldn't say no because my probation officer was so keen. He said, prison is no place for you anymore, Norman. Because I've done all the courses and I had a good record, they sent me to a hostel to see how I got on. They said I'd been a model prisoner and they gave me a travel warrant and an address and said I had to be there by 5 o'clock. They gave me some money too, which was nice. It was more than I'd had in my hand the whole time I was inside. I thought, well, maybe it isn't so bad. I took a taxi. After that, I didn't have so much money. I'm not allowed back home because of my license. My probation officer said if I was caught there, they'd send me back quick as quick. I said, I've nothing to go home for, got no family. Never heard from anyone there. The whole time I was in. He said, that's just as well, Norman, time for a fresh start. I said, what kind of start can you make at my age? He said, you'll make a new life soon enough, mate, once you get settled. Have you got a hobby? I had to think, and then it came to me. I said, I like birds. Got lots of books from the library, and I like to look at the pictures. I found some of the words a bit hard, so I just chose the ones with the best colours. And he said, well, maybe you'll become a twitcher, Norman. I said, I know what a twitcher is. It's someone who goes chasing after unusual birds to look at them and write them down in a book. I said, I couldn't be a twitcher. I haven't got a car. Only the bus. So that's what I did. I fed the birds. I usually managed to find a bit of bread or something left over in the kitchen, or I'd save a few slices from breakfast. And if you sit long enough on a bench, sooner or later one will come along and start pecking. And you get to know them after a while. I gave them names. Sally and Joe and Little Fred. And then I found a pack of sandwiches beneath the seat at the bus stop, all open on the ground. I thought, well, someone's going to miss his lunch. They were tuna. Well, I don't like tuna very much. A chap was standing next to me. They must have thought I was going to eat them because he said I should give it to the birds. Well, I wasn't going to eat them, was I? I wouldn't. It's dirty. But he gave me an idea. There's a park not far away where there's a lake and there are lots of birds. I thought, well, why don't I go down and feed them by the lake? It'll make a change. I don't know if I'm supposed to go in there or not in case there's kiddies, but the thought got into my head that I really wanted to feed the birds. Mother always said, when a thought gets into your head, Norman, you can't get it out. And so I did. I went in with the sandwiches in my pocket to feed the birds. I found them all right. Lots of them. Ducks and geese all milling around. And people too, some with their kiddies. So I sat on a bench by the water and started to pull off bits of sandwich and throw them in front of me, and a few little birdies came up and started pecking, but most of them were too busy with what was going on by the water. And then this little girl came up. She just stood there watching as I was feeding the birds. I said, "Hello." She didn't say anything. I said, "Is your mummy about?" I'd already had a look and I couldn't see anyone. I thought, well, I hope she's not on her own. And she came toward me with her hand out, and I said, "Do you want to feed the birds too?" And she nods her head, and I said, "There's ducks over there," and I made a sound like a duck. Quack, quack. The kitty smiled a little at this and took a step closer to me, so I gave her a piece of the sandwich, and I said, "Don't eat it, it's for the birds." But she turned and ran toward the water with it in her hand, holding it up high. I knew what would happen. The geese started hissing and snapping at her, and she was just standing there holding up her piece of bread. It's not long before they take a nip at her. She started to cry, poor little thing. For one that had been so quiet, she cried very loudly. So I went over to her, wanting to scare the geese away, but this man must have seen me, and he came running in, and I got to the little girl just before he did. And I tried to take the bread away from her, thinking that's what's bothering them. I think I picked her up, wanting to carry her off, but he must have seen it differently. He took hold of her and gave me a shove, and I fell in the water. And he called me all sorts of names, things I'm not. When I got back to the hostel, I was still soaking wet. I had to tell him what happened. My probation officer said I should never have gone into the park. He said I should know it's off limits. And what did I think I was doing, talking to little girls? He said it didn't matter what I intended, it's what happened that counts. I said, what about him? The bloke? What about what he did to me? What about the bruises? I said I nearly drowned. He said he'd mention it. And when I got back to prison, they said I was a big disappointment to them, but I'd broken the terms of my license, and that was that. So here I am again. I don't mind much. I was on basics for a while, then enhanced, and I've got a new job now, cleaning on the wing, which is nice. Keeps me occupied. And I borrowed another book about birds from the library. I want to work in the gardens come spring. Didn't like it on the out. I don't want to go back. What's to go back out for?